very warm welcome to Zoetermeer in the Netherlands. Yesterday the whole country was skating, but today we're going to be in a discussion about smart energy systems, hosted by KPN and GSMA. This is the webinar. Welcome to Jikke, of course, and to Silvana. You're both working at the sustainability department at KPN. And today we're launching a paper, Smart Energy Systems, Connectivity for a Zero Emissions Future. We're going to talk about it for the next hour, of course. We have got many guests from all over the world, from Germany, from England, and of course from the Netherlands. Let's start with you. First of all, the audience is like 300 people at this
Approximately,
moment?
yes.
We're not sure, of course. You can't talk back to us. It's only one-way traffic here. Okay, excuse me about that. So what's the issue we're going to talk about? How can you add as a telecom company to the global sustainability goals? And your story started, Jikke, in 2016. You worked for KPN already for a year, and what happened with you?
Yes, thank you. In 2016, there came a question that was a real game changer for me. A manager asked me what will be the energy consumption of KPN in 2030. And that question really shook me up. Is this a relevant question? Because there will be an energy transition, the world will go upside down. Is this the question we want to answer? So instead of answering this question, we interviewed 30 experts within KPN and within the energy sector. Only asking them one question based on their expertise and their perspective. What will the world look like in 2030? How will it look like?
And 2030?
2030.
Well,
and
who knows?
No, we know a little. We know things that are technical possible. So, yeah. And that's really where my adventure started. And that's our journey, which brings us here today.
Together with Silvana, yeah. Energy, is it a problem for KPN? I mean, how many euros do you spend a year on energy, if that's an issue?
Yeah, we spend a lot.
Or nobody knows?
No, nobody knows. No, it's over the 50 million, and we have like 25,000 connections. Mm-hmm. So it's a very big subject within KPN.
But for telecom industry, it's not really the key issue. The key issue, I'm gonna use this kind of technology, I'm gonna make phone calls. I mean, that's your business, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the core business.
Yeah.
But I think we have to look how we can use the connectivity also for a sustainable world.
Okay. It's all in the report?
Yes.
In this paper?
Yes.
We're going to discuss about that. Or can you already tell me something, what's in it?
No, I think the next 50 minutes, everything will tell. Yeah. We have a lot of interesting speakers who can inform us more. But there was another question that made me think over the past years. A consultant asked me another day, is it allowed to spill renewable energy? So think about it.
Because there's no cost of it, so...
Yeah, so is it allowed to spill it? And that made me really wonder, how could the world look like in 2030? Yeah. We have to move from fossil fuels to renewable energy. Yeah. But how does it actually work? How can companies like KPN contribute to this? Mm-hmm. And we found out it's all about using the right energy at the right time. Yep. Last year, I spoke about it at a gathering of the GSMA in Brussels, and then especially about the role of 5G in the energy transition. And afterwards, I received a phone call from the GSMA. They were interested in the topic as well. Yeah. And that's, we are very proud. We can present a paper today.
So within GSMA, KPN is a front runner. Or are all the telcos issuing this problem?
I cannot say for sure. Of course, sustainability is a big subject for every telco operation. And hopefully we can make the next step and using connectivity to make the world more sustainable.
Okay, we'll get back to you. Let's first move to Germany. Professor Wolf Ketter, are you there? Professor, you're director of the Institute of Energy Economics in at the University of Cologne, and also a member of the Global Future Council at the World Economic Forum. There's no World Economic Forum this year, or is it online?
Oh, there was a big event. We call it the Davos Agenda, which was obviously online over 4 days. So it was a very successful event.
Was it very successful? So,
It was obviously different than usual, right, where you do all the networking on site. But I think, given the situations, I think we did the best we could.
Okay, Professor, your specialism is how can we exploit the rapidly advancing computer power to create a faster, more sustainable transition to cleaner energy and mobility. But before we move to your keynote, it's going to take like 10 or 12 minutes maybe. Germany moved faster to the transition than we did in the Netherlands because we are a kind of a Kuwait on the North Sea. We are a gas country. So can you see big differences between Germany and the Netherlands in that case?
Well, actually, the difference is becoming, I think, less and less. So let's look at the things we have in common. I think that is going towards a sustainable solution overall, and that's what I will talk today. And the good news about the Netherlands, there are many good things, but as a smaller country, you can also be more flexible, right, in probably abolishing some older resources and go for the new ones. And that's what I will also talk today about sustainable and flexible energy. And between the Netherlands and my part of Germany, North Rhine-Westphalia, there's of course the linking pin, and that's the Rhine, and the Port of Rotterdam will play also an essential role here. We are just launching also a new project here.
Okay, one strange thing is we are all moving from gas. We're stopping the gas, and you're in North Rhine-Westphalia, you guys starting with natural gas, isn't it, for households?
Well, yes, but we have actually started a complete new campaign on hydrogen, right? So what we want to do is we want to go for a green hydrogen, so meaning hydrogen being produced by sustainable energy resources. And that part of hydrogen, which I will allude to also partially in my presentation, will use it for storage, specifically seasonal storage during winter times.
Okay. Professor, we're going to move to your TEDx kind of presentation. What's the demand? What is demand flexibility? It's the floor is yours for the next 10 minutes.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So welcome everybody. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you so much for the invitation. So actually, I'm going also here back to the roots because I'm also a trained telecommunication systems engineer. So actually closing the loop after many years. And before we go to the future, we have to go and understand the past here. And that is, let's have a look, where do we start off? You know, we started with our electricity grids in a way of vertical top-down integration. So the same company that produced the energy and, or let's say electricity, distributed it, and finally built the end customers. And these were usually very passive entities. So if you see this is really centralized top-down control. And it was relatively easy, not too easy, but relatively easy for those electricity providers to predict the demand. I mean, there were usual patterns, not thinking about the pandemic, where people, you know, moved in the mornings to work, returned in the evenings home, and we had a good handle on how much energy they needed. Well, in electricity terms, what is important to keep a tight balance on demand and supply. And if you don't do that, you get brown or even worse blackout, which potentially the horrible economic consequences. Actually, the DSO, the distribution systems operator, did in the past a very good job of keeping that in balance. But what, you know, we are changing now. With the advent of more renewables, right, we are going from this, you know, demand-driven system, which we had in the past, to more what we call a supply-driven system. Why is that? Because we are adding more and more sustainable energy resources, such as wind parks. But the obvious problem is, even though in the Netherlands, for example, the wind is blowing quite regularly, but not always, right? And also, we have more and more solar coming onto the landscape. And with solar, also obviously at the most 50%, you get output. In summer, maybe a little bit more. But also here, what happens if clouds, like today I'm looking out, it's a cloudy day, it's rainy, actually little wind, but hardly any sun. How do we deal with that? And actually in Germany last year, we sold triple as many electric vehicles as in the years before each year. And the number is only going to increase. That's wonderful if we're actually using it and charging it with sustainable energy. But one of the challenges is that these electric vehicles, they need at least half or approximately maybe the same level of electricity as a single household does. Well, with that, if you actually have that, actually in a neighborhood, if you have a couple of electric vehicles, like we are just installing chargers for our house, then my neighbors say, oh, that's great. So if a couple of neighbors have that, perfect. But if too many, that can be an issue. And specifically if we have less and less main power plants, centralized power plants. So we're actually going to decentralize even more, and we need to intelligently manage these resources to stay in balance. So we need to actually be flexible. It doesn't mean when we come home in the evening that we immediately charge. We might plug in our electric vehicle, but there is an intelligent system, a particular personalized AI, that schedules the operation with you so that the whole part of the neighborhood can keep the lights on. And that's what we traditionally would call loss of control, top-down control. But what we are having actually, we're having a bottom-up control, self-organized systems. And that's the way how we deal with this increased variability or volatility of output and demand. So we are really going from this demand-driven infrastructure to the supply-driven infrastructure because we're adding more and more renewable energy resources. And the more we add of these resources, the more we need to make sure that we have a so-called demand flexibility in the grid. And that actually is, we need to be resilient. What I said earlier, that the electricity grid always needs to be in tight balance between demand and supply. That resiliency requires that our whole grid is flexible. And with the help of automation, we can reach this. Our working hypothesis is the higher the share of renewable energy resources, the more we need to electrify, the more we need to automate the energy landscape. Well, this is of course many challenges ahead, but I'm a business school professor, so where challenges, there are opportunities, right? And it's quite complex, but of course there are geographical challenges. Some places you have more potential for renewables than others. And also we're going from the many years, months and years of procuring of energy to maybe only 36 to 24 hours advanced energy trading. And also as in the telecom industry, where we traditionally had only like very passive customers, we often call them just connecting points in the energy and the telecom industry, we're going to now active players, which we call prosumers, producing and consuming at the same time. And then the landscape is changing. So we're going from this traditional to a new, sustainable, smart energy system, which is really a living system. And you had asked me a question earlier in the introduction. Hydrogen will play an essential role here as what we call seasonal storage. Because with electric vehicles, we might be able to cover a couple hours, but sometimes we have dark floods, meaning not much wind, not much sun during November, December, January, February, but hydrogen can help us to overcome that. And we call it green hydrogen if these hydrogens being produced by renewable energy resources. Another concept that we're working on with many companies such as Daimler and BMW is called, for example, the concept of virtual power plants on the distribution grid. So if you're going to replace or kind of phase out, like for example in Germany next year, all nuclear power plants, so we need to be able to have new kind of power plants, decentralized. One way to do so is we can connect, aggregate 10,000 or 100,000 of electric vehicles and kind of simulate or emulate if we would have one large power plant, but in reality there are 10,000 of cars behind, so we can actually charge or decharge the battery as needed on the environmental conditions. And to do so, we need, of course, smart devices, among others, or smart meters, and the Internet of Things. And that is actually also where the telecom industry comes perfectly into place. That, of course, requires much more connectivity, obviously mobile connectivity. These cars are not just electric, but we call them case vehicles, connected, autonomous, shared, and electric. We really need 5G properly to get that energy landscape, to get the new mobility landscape functioning, and the telecom will play an essential role here. And that, of course, requires tremendous challenge of systems integration between the energy players, telecom players, all the players in the energy landscape and mobility landscape. And that, again, as I said earlier, the increasing share of renewables, the more we need to automate with the help of artificial intelligence and machine learning. So what are the elements of a successful transition to sustainable smart energy systems? So as you see, we have lots of terms flying around here. For the telecom industry, we also need to look for the infrastructure, and battery, cloud computing, edge computing, systems integration, wireless connectivity. These are just some of the terms which are important to us and which you could discuss further, and you can contact me if you like to. Also, if you look at the sustainable energy relationships, I don't know why, but I'm really sorry this crashed right now, but this doesn't really matter too much because we can just talk. What is going to happen is the telecom role plays, and you see this beautiful background hopefully, the telecom here plays an essential role because we can think about also this new type of business model, like, for example, in virtual power planting, where we can transmit the information, what is going on at different places. We can maybe better predict supply and demand, what is going on in a smart city. We could also better, like if you are looking out here, I see a telecom post, a large transmission antenna, and on these we could, for example, mount localized weather stations, so we could actually provide much more up-to-date weather reports. So the telecom is already in charge of a lot of the assets, and combining that intelligently with the energy landscape in terms of systems integration can business models, what I call doing good by doing well. So earning money, but also providing a social good for the society. I think that's really one of the best things you can do. And also, like among others, with the virtual power plants, telecoms bring essential assets, or in smart buildings of the future, because telecoms are already in the houses, in the buildings. And the role of smart meters in the future is also debatable because many of the electronic devices are able to transmit wireless their energy information. So the telecom actually can provide as an aggregator of information, and you're actually sitting on a wealth of information and data that you can actually marketing to specific sectors, almost like a Facebook for specific telecommunications data. So these are just a few thoughts I wanted to share at this point, and I invite you for any questions now or later on. Thank you so much.
Professor, thank you very much for your... Yeah, but this is only an appetizer for a professor. You need at least 45 minutes to address all those issues. Thanks a lot. I think the last 4 or 5 slides were lost somewhere in cyberspace. I don't know where they were.
I tried to actually, just to give you the voiceover which I had. I hope I was successful.
Thank you very much. We move to Stephen Moore and Harry Morgan in London and in Bristol. Perhaps, I'm not sure. Stephen Moore, you're zooming from? Microphone. Can't hear you
yes,
yet.
I'm here.
Open the microphone, please. Yeah.
Apologies, I was on mute.
No problem. Stephen Moore, Head of Climate Action, GSMA. GSMA is it's a GSM. Well, when we were kids, we knew what GSM was the telephone. In those days, you're the 750 mobile operators connected worldwide in your organization. Yeah, powerful club.
That's correct. Yeah, it's all the mobile operators globally are members of the GSMA, the GSM Association. We're the industry association.
Mm-hmm. KPN is, well, it's all about forward thinking here at KPN, but it's only one of the 750 members. So what is the focus within GMSA about sustainability? Or are they just selling mobile telephone minutes?
So we have a big focus on sustainability, particularly around the Sustainable Development Goals, and in particular, as we're talking about today, around climate action. So we have an ambition as an industry to be net zero carbon emissions by 2050 at the latest.
Okay, so the Paris Accord. Harry Morgan from Bristol. Yes, is that correct?
Yes, yeah, Bristol.
You're the senior analyst and editor of Rethink Technology Research, and you produced this paper, which we are launching today. So you're an analyst. Well, I think we're going to go to a presentation about this report, about this paper. Yes? Can you talk? I'm not sure your voice is... Can I hear you or not?
Yes, I think so.
We moeten even op de camera in het midden kijken, jongens. Okay, so well, let's move over to the presentation. Smart energy system connectivity for a zero emissions future. What are your conclusions?
Great. Well, maybe we'll start at the beginning and then we'll move on to the conclusions towards the end. But Harry, could you perhaps give us a bit of an overview of how we're defining smart energy systems in this report?
Yeah, so I suppose it goes back to quite a lot about what Wolf was saying, was that, so I suppose the overarching concept that we're just talking about when we're discussing these smart energy systems is this shift away from centralized generation, where you've got these massive generation plants in the middle, pumping electricity out to the edge, basically, and moving towards a system focused on distributed energy resources, where the point of generation is much closer to the consumer, and we've got these increased rates of flow of both data and electricity between the consumer and the grid. In terms of making the system as smart as possible, I suppose, we really need to collect as much data as we can about generation and about consumption, so that we can dictate the most optimal flows of energy, with the overall objective, I suppose, of increasing the system efficiency. But as more and more countries have sort of pledged themselves to reach net zero emissions by 2050, this becomes much more of a question about how we can really realise the full value of our renewable energy assets, and then hopefully retire some fossil fuel plants ahead of schedule.
Yeah, which would be great. So we're looking at managing flows of energy, managing flows of data, and bringing more renewables online. What are the foundations of a smart energy system that enable us to do this?
Yeah, so I mean, the first thing that's probably worth noting is that smart energy systems aren't necessarily indicative of scale. I mean, it could be trading between houses, it could be trading between countries. But I think what we've really noticed is that there are sort of three core things that underpin the foundations of a smart energy system. The first of these being connectivity. Obviously, we need to collect and sort of transmit this data and process it. So what we've really drilled down onto in the report is wireless and mobile connectivity, and how inclusive that can be in pooling a wide range of resources, both on the sort of generation side of things and the consumption side of things, pooling that together so that we've got all of this data that we can then use to optimize the system. In terms of mobile connectivity as well, I think that means that the overall smart energy system infrastructure can be built out with much less disruption than with sort of a wired alternative. On top of this, then we need some sort of cloud computing as well to obviously collate and handle all the data, especially given the fact that it's so dynamic and time sensitive in a lot of instances. And then we need, finally, some sort of platform to manage everything, probably using some sort of artificial intelligence to actually make sense of the data and give some sort of instruction to the system of how we can actually optimize the energy flows within it.
Great. I think we've got a bit of an overview on the next slide. Of different elements and applications of a smart energy system. So perhaps an elaboration of what Wolf was talking about before. Harry, do you just want to talk through how we see our energy system progressing from quite an analog system at the moment to this digital smart energy system?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this diagram's great at sort of demonstrating sort of the future of the energy system in that regard. I think what we've noticed is we've really focusing on 5 areas within the report in terms of sort of distinct growth, but they're very much overlapped. And I think as we move towards sort of digitalization, they will sort of merge together to hopefully form one sort of smart energy system. So the first area that we've really focused on is distributed energy resources, probably most noted at the moment by the growth in rooftop solar. And as Wolf was talking about, this shift from people who just consume electricity to those who also provide some level of production themselves, to this era of prosumers, if you like, which, especially over sort of the recent years, has actually started to include our second area of focus, which is battery storage, which I believe is represented in the sort of top left of this diagram, sort of enabling us to provide sort of 24/7 clean power by sort of dealing with the intermittencies from when the wind's not blowing, the sun's not shining, the problems that you often hear people who are against the energy transition complaining about. And in terms of sort of maximising the resource that we have available to us, an area that we're really keen on is that of vehicle-to-grid technology. Obviously, there's going to be millions of electric vehicles on the roads in the years to come, so actually being able to harness this resource is really important. And given the fact that these vehicles are actually parked for 95% of the time, being able to connect those can really accelerate the rate at which we can reach our net zero targets, especially in the power system. Integrating all of these things together sort of brings us to our fourth area of focus, which is virtual power plants. Again, something that Wolf touched on very well. And yeah, using these sort of smaller scale generation and storage facilities to essentially replicate what we've previously had from these large scale generators. But the great thing about virtual power plants as well is it also influences the consumption side of things, and enables us to sort of not have these sudden spikes in electricity that can't necessarily be managed by a renewable power system. I think then our final area of focus was that of microgrid trading, and sort of really emphasising that the sort of financial changes that this will facilitate and the amount of different stakeholders that will be benefiting from this shift towards smart energy systems.
Great, thank you. So we've got distributed energy resources, battery storage, vehicle-to-grid, virtual power plants, and microgrid trading.
Yeah.
And all of these are different elements, if you like, of a smart energy system. How do you see them working together? Are they very distinct in the way that they will work, or is there quite a lot of interaction between them?
I mean, they are distinct. They're distinct in their own right, especially as we see pilot projects come into play. But I think the way that they work together will be how we see the efficiencies come to this sort of smart energy system. It's interesting seeing how these come into play. I mean, a while ago, battery storage was seen as sort of the final piece to the puzzle of the energy transition. But given how rapidly costs are falling in that sector, it's really become a reality now. But also on sort of the consumption side of things, as we've said, what we really need to see is these price signals come into play that incentivize people to use electricity in times of low demand, right? Or at times of high renewables output. We've seen this through, especially in terms of the mobile sector's impact, we've seen this through smart meters. But in terms of the smart energy system, this will become more automated, and especially in sort of the use of sort of household appliances being used at times where it's most appropriate, not necessarily on the immediate demand of the consumer. And then I suppose there's also the generational side of things. I mean, we really need to make sure that we're making the sort of fully realizing the value of our renewable energy assets. And that can come through sort of reducing the downtime. We've got a really good case study in the report where we focus in on sort of network drones, sort of analysing hotspots within solar panels, analysing defects so that they can be back up and running as quickly as possible. And then also sort of analysing the technical performance of these renewable energy assets and making sure that they're producing as much electricity as they can be at any given time with any available sort of natural resource, I suppose.
Wolf mentioned before the role of telecommunications and in particular mobile network operators in this new, in the transition to this new type of energy system. How do you see mobile networks supporting this?
Yeah, and I might imagine that's something that's going to be touched on quite heavily in the panel discussion we've got coming up. I think it's really important to note that the mobile networks, in many regards, are actually very similar to the energy networks. They're very wide-ranging, they're very pervasive. Often, sort of the geographic footprint of the customers are the same. And I think as we're shifting towards a more distributed approach to energy, the mobile networks have the experience in creating these new networks quickly and rapidly, incrementally, which can be of real value to the energy sector. And I think the over-the-top services that they provide in terms of cloud storage, in terms of the sort of platform integration that they have, I think that, yeah, I mean, we were joking earlier, it's sort of a Valentine's match made in heaven, Stephen. And yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of cohesion between the industries going forward.
Yeah, as we kind of move forward and look to bring on more renewables, we've called this report Smart Energy Systems Connectivity for a Zero Emissions Future. What are the carbon saving benefits going to be of moving towards a smarter energy system?
Yeah, it's such an important question. And I think it can be really difficult to quantify sort of the carbon savings from any initial project off the bat. But especially as sort of smart energy systems are so young. But I mean, once we get to sort of 30% of wind and solar in the energy mix, we're really starting to need these smart energy systems so that we can, so that we're not losing out on our renewable assets. We're not seeing wind power curtailed and sort of shut down when there's more supply than there is demand. So because of this, by 2030, we're expecting to see around 13% of energy systems with some element of smart technology involved, rising to 86% by 2050. So aggregating all of the benefits together in terms of load shifting, in terms of reduced downtime, the actual efficiencies we can see improved amounts to around 25% improvement, really. Based on the energy system we've got today, that amounts around 7.7 billion tons of CO2 per year, which, to put into perspective, is about the same as the transport market today. So it's a massive potential saving. And on the other side of that coin, you've got the economic benefits. So if you've got these efficiency savings, you don't have to build up more renewable assets, which without the savings would have cost $1.9 trillion per year extra by our estimations anyway.
So huge potential efficiencies of actually moving towards a smarter system. And then just finally, I wanted to ask you just to touch on briefly, what do you think the role of legislation and regulation is going to be in this? Is that going to be important, or can it just be driven by the private sector?
I mean, there has to be some power from above, I suppose. The sort of drive towards net zero by 2050 is driving everything at the moment, especially in terms of carbon tax and things like that. I mean, the role of regulators really does need to acknowledge that there is I suppose, an air gap between the sectors for mobile technologies and the energy sector. So being aware of that in terms of creating policy is really important. Especially as we start to see more consumers involved in the production of electricity, regulators are going to have to become more active in terms of ensuring it's equitable for everyone. It's fair the amount of money people are receiving for their rooftop solar. I mean, we're going to need to see them promote things like standardization across the board in terms of the technology being used across Europe. And we're going to need to see incentives for consumers to actually pick up this technology and play their own individual role in the fight to reach net zero emissions by 2050.
Great. Thank you very much for talking through that. Just to finish off then, a shout out for the report, Smart Energy Systems, Connectivity for a Zero Emissions Future, is available on our website, gsma.com. Please do check it out. Thanks very much to Harry for talking through that. And I've always wanted to say this, back to the studio.
Thanks a lot, Stephen and Harry. One question from the studio. I'm driving an electric car myself, private. Can you force me to use that car for this whole system? And what is my reward?
Harry, I'll let you take that one.
Yeah, I thought you might. Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, it's something that a lot of companies are really wrestling with, those who are sort of experimenting in the vehicle to grid sector. I think it needs to be demonstrated that it works, because realistically, consumer habits in terms of driving are outrageously predictable. I mean, very few people are waking up in the middle of the night and wanting to drive their car. So if people are willing to accept that they're going to allow the top sort of 60% of their battery to be used overnight to sort of help balance the electricity system, and it works, and they can receive finances for it, then why not? I mean, it's something that we're going to need to see some consumer change in, but it's certainly something that we can expect to see over the next 10 years or so.
But it will ruin the capacity, lifespan of your battery. That's a problem, isn't it?
There's been quite a lot of research into this, and there's very little evidence to support the fact that it will actually degrade the battery.
Okay.
I think there's actually some evidence to support the fact that it'd be worse for a battery to be stored at fully charged for a longer amount of time.
Okay, I'm relieved, gentlemen. Thank you very much. Stephen and Harry Morgan, thanks a lot. Go back to the studio. And of course, Jik is still here. And Sylvana Level, Sustainability Frontrunner at KPN.
Yes.
Is it a title, Sustainability Frontrunner? Is that your title on your business card?
Yeah, well, it's a self-made-up title, actually.
Okay. Because you started at with this company, with KPN, how many years ago?
5 years ago.
And then suddenly there was this lightning moment, lightning struck you.
Yes.
Where was that?
Well, it was actually in 2017 when I was on, we call it the Energy Boat. And it's an event in the Netherlands. And there I really found that KPN has a really big role to play in the current energy transition.
Yeah.
And that I wanted to make myself to
More
really
useful.
more useful for that. And I think also what's very interesting is that over the time I found out that my purpose is also very close to what KPN drives, and that's to connect people. Because I think with a strong connection, you can really strengthen each other's best qualities. 1 + 1 becomes 3 instead of 2. And yeah, with those two beliefs, I really wanted to do something for KPN.
So what did you do? There was something with a battery. Tell me.
Yes, that's true. We called it the Kpn Battery Project.
Yeah.
Well, it actually started because, of course, KPN is a telco. It's not an energy company. And I thought if we wanted to do something with this, we had to do things differently.
Yeah.
And luckily, I got all the support that I wanted, that I needed from KPN. There were 3 things that I really needed. And one was to really seize the opportunity, because the energy market was going to change with or without KPN. We needed enthusiastic partners because we couldn't do it alone. And we needed some guts.
Okay,
and
but first of all, the batteries. Why KPN has a lot of batteries?
Yeah.
You almost never use them. That's like an extra capacity.
Yeah.
In times of.
Well, when there is a power outage, for example.
But there's never a power outage in the Netherlands.
No, but
as
you
far
have
as
to,
I know.
Yeah. But you have to imagine that if there is no energy, we have no network, and if we have no network, we have no services for our customers. So we really need it.
So you've got all those batteries in the Netherlands. How many?
Oh, I think it's 1,500 divided over the whole country. Yeah.
So what did you do?
Well, what I did was, first of all, we organized a hackathon, and that's where the Kpn Battery Project was invented. We got people from KPN, from our operational partners, students, everyone thinking about the question, how can the infrastructure of KPN contribute to a more sustainable Netherlands? Yeah. And that's where the Kpn Battery Project was born.
So, this hackathon, there was a kind of a conclusion to that? There were many ideas, obviously.
Yes, and the Kpn Battery Project was the winning idea. Yeah. And
that was the winning idea of the whole hackathon.
Yeah.
Ah, right.
And the good thing was also that the winning idea was also going to be executed, and that's when we started this project. And I was also able to connect all the people with different expertises from energy, from data, people from corporates, from startups, and all of us together, we created the project plan for this project.
But the project is running now, Jik, or not? Is it?
Yes,
Yeah?
yes, definitely.
It's up and running. So how much energy are you guys saving now?
Well, it's not so much about saving energy. It's about using the right energy at the right time, what Jik also explained.
Efficiency. Yeah. It's about efficiency and right in
and
time.
making efficient use of the available green energy, actually.
And you are working together, of course, as a department within KPN, but KPN is a big company. So how important is it for KPN? We're going to talk to one of the members of the board within a couple of seconds. Are you doing this alone? Is it a project alone somewhere in this big company, or is it, well?
Yeah, it's actually something that we're doing together with many partners. Partners from energy companies, from startups as well, algorithm experts, and all of us together, we're doing this project.
But this is still within KPN. Are you also working together with the other big telco company in the Netherlands? What is its name called again? You should know.
Not
competition.
yet, but hopefully after today, we can do this all together with all the all the operators in the Netherlands, but also outside the Netherlands. We have to learn from each other.
Yeah, okay, so it's open source knowledge. Yeah, everybody can use that. Shall we go to, APN?
Well, maybe some lessons learned that I would like to share. Because I think the most important one is that telco really was the fundament of this project. And I didn't realize that before, but KPN was not just making its batteries available, we actually had to connect all the devices. And we had to do that in a secure way, and we had to process all the data. And that's something that KPN is already providing as a service. And I think that that's also what's in the report, in the Smart Energy Systems report, and where telcos don't really realize the changes that are going on in the energy market on the one hand, but the energy companies are not really realizing that the questions that they have can be found, the answers can be found in telco, and that's something that I really learned.
Okay, thanks a lot, Silvana. We're going to the panel. Let's introduce Marcia Zavar, Head of Policy and Strategy at Kaluza in the UK. Hello, Marcia, are you there? Okay. Hello. Mark van Stiphout, Deputy Head of Innovation at DG Energy at the European Commission. So we got a super bureaucrat, and it's a compliment, to Brussels. And Paul Slot, Executive Vice President at KPN Infrastructure. Let's start with you, Marcia. Kaluza, what kind of company is that?
Thank you. So Kaluza is a technology company. We try to make life easier for energy suppliers and trying to make their billing platform easier, low cost, and in a way that engages their customers. In addition to that, we also have our flexibility platform, our demand response platform, which we act as an aggregator of load that we could then use and be able to turn static demand into dynamic demand. And I just want to go back to what you said, the question you asked earlier about you have a car at your house. What would you do with it? Well, Kaluza right now is able to offer OVO customers half the price of electricity per hour because of our aggregation platform. So an average customer right now pays about 14 pence per kilowatt hour, or EV customers who are able to connect to our aggregation platform, we're giving them 6 cents per kilowatt hour for their EV use. So that's the type of services and technology that we like to offer customers as they begin to get smart devices in their home. We like to use those smart devices for their advantage, for their pocketbooks.
Okay, Marcia, so Kaluza is the greenest company in the UK, is it, in your business?
We're OVO Energy. I would say OVO Energy is the energy supplier, the greenest, but there are many people who say they're greenest. Kaluza is an enabler of being green. We can make the household green and the supplier green.
Okay. Let's go to Mark van Stiphout. You're working in Brussels. Are you working close to Timmermans, or is it another department?
Well, Frans Timmermans is our executive vice president, so he's responsible for the Green Deal, and of course energy is a big part of it. And we report directly to a commissioner who's called Kadri Simpson, who's responsible for energy. Yeah,
my question to you is, of course, are the politicians willing to cope and are ready for accepting smart energy systems? What needs to be done now?
Yeah, that's indeed a very good question. I think they are ready. I think everybody realizes the importance and the potential of digitalization in the energy market, how it can help the energy transition. I think there are maybe three important points in terms of what needs to happen. And that is to make sure, let's say all of this is necessary to make sure that the digital technologies help the energy transition, help integrating renewables into the system in a way that makes it easy, to scale up solutions like the ones we're discussing here, the business cases in the GSMA report, because these are very often about communicating with a lot of distributed assets at the same time. For example, a lot of electric cars at the same time that are going to be moving around, but it can equally be, let's say, freezers or fridges in houses which don't move around. But in any case, it will be about exchange of information between the consumer, what he wants, the energy supplier, the network operator, maybe the car manufacturer.
Yeah.
So making sure that this happens easy is an interest of all, but nobody will make the first step unless I think there is a public intervention to make sure that the data is shared and being made available easily. And that is what we are working on at the moment.
Because Mark van Sippard, are there privacy issues with sharing all your information or your devices with everybody?
Yes, of course.
Yeah?
I think for us, the basic premise is that this needs to be something that the customer actually wants. And so it always starts with a customer or a consumer who is interested in a certain service. For example, you with your electric car, if you say to your energy supplier, I don't mind that you use it, and then your energy supplier says, then I need this type of data, and then you agree to that. And if you don't agree, then that's the end of the service.
Marcia is going to make me happy with 50% reduction of the price. So why wouldn't I say yes to that? Huh? Maybe exactly. when you're killing my battery in the end. But okay, to Paul Slot, Executive Vice President.
Not killing the battery. Not killing the battery at all. I mean, I want to dispel that misconception. I know you're joking, but it's something that people talk about and say. And actually, even with V2G, Kaluza is the first installer of V2G in the world. We've done a trial with Energy UK for the past year and a half. We're going to unveil our report probably in a couple of months. We have not seen any degradation of the battery, and we are complying with the warranty rules of the manufacturer. And then for the smart charging, definitely there's no evidence there of any degradation of battery.
So Marcia, for once and for all, you've said it. Okay, accept it as truth, of course. What is the biggest issue for you in technical terms, or is it just what Paul said? Well, we just have to make a system. Government has to do that. Legislation, whatever. What's the most important to you?
Well, the biggest issue to change static demand into dynamic demand. First, we have to connect all the homes. That requires incentives for the customer. That requires products that customers want. For instance, this OVO Anytime that we're doing for OVO Energy, EV customers want a 50% reduction in their tariff, so they're going to want to join us. These are the types of things that we have to put out there. But the single biggest obstacle, I would say two obstacles for flexibility to be prevalent in the energy industry, so we can take better advantage of renewable energy, is scale in the market, scale of smart devices in the market. And we know that's coming. But what we don't know that's coming is a regulatory redesign of the market. There's a lot of little rules and regulations that have been in place for decades and decades and decades. We need to be able to identify those. Regulators need to remove it and create a level playing field for domestic flexibility.
Yeah, but you're calling from the UK. I think the European Union has to do this. The UK is not part of it anymore. Sorry, you can't do it without.
I'm actually from California, and California is heavily regulated. I came to Europe and realized that the UK market is a very, very open and competitive market. Yeah. And I think, if anything, as long as we fix these rules and regulations, which the regulators are looking to, we should be able to get to net zero by 2050 in an affordable manner.
Okay, Paul Slot, Executive Vice President, KPN. now we all know 4G. We're waiting for 5G. There is some 5G already in our country, probably, but it's not everywhere. And this project is finishing within how many years?
Well, 5G is here in the Netherlands. We have it, actually it started last year. 5G, I think it's important to have. We heard it by the other presenters as well. And even Marcia was saying we need to connect everything. And that's where 5G plays an important role. So I would say 5G is a new...
You would say 5G is key to implementing this smart energy system, yes?
Yes, indeed. We do have a good infrastructure, but with 5G, we provide things like better coverage, better speed, but actually it's about low latency, which is a technical term for the time data needs to travel. That needs to be short. You need to be able to respond quickly. Other aspects as well. When you want to connect everything, we talk about wireless IoT. Connecting all those devices, all those smart meters. You also need to be able to connect those systems and process the data as local as possible. In technical terms, they call that edge computing, and that's all those things are being provided by 5G.
So it's
and therefore you're going to get the mobile connectivity. That we were talking about, Professor Ketter was talking about personalized AI, was talking about demand flexibility, smart devices. Now all those things require mobility, smart mobility, and the local processing, and that's where 5G comes into the play.
Okay, but so when will be the moment KPN is ready to roll out?
Yeah, absolutely. We're rolling out 5G in the whole country.
Yeah.
Actually, done most of it last year already, and continuing with that as we speak. Indeed.
Okay, but now we're talking about the Netherlands. So we need to do it. We talked to Mark van Stiphout. You need to do it in 27 countries immediately, probably or not. Is that possible? I mean, Bulgaria and Denmark and the Netherlands and Spain all together in one system. Or do you do it all locally? Ja, ik denk dat we een klein technisch dingetje hebben. Ik wil maar zeggen, connectivity is key. You still hear us? Zoetermeer, hoor je ons?
We can hear you.
Ja, wij horen u wel. We can hear you, but we can't see you. So just talk to me. So the question for Mark van Stiphout. How are you going to do this for 27 countries at once?
Well, let's say at once. I think we are trying to make sure that it's important that it happens in 27 countries. And from the EU's perspective, we are trying to make sure that we put the legislations and the policies in place so that these investments can actually happen. And a lot of this has to do with national regulations to stimulate this type of investment. But of course, you know that currently, because of the crisis we're currently in, there is a big budget available at EU level to invest in the recovery of our economies. And out of that total budget, which is something like 750 billion euros, loans and grants, we have agreed at EU level that 20% of that will be invested in digital solutions, and 37% of that will be invested in the Green Deal and in the energy transition. So we are trying to make sure that we discuss with countries, we agree how this money is best spent, and it's clear that a lot of that will also be invested in telecom infrastructure.
Yeah. Okay, so any questions for each other for the panel? So Paul Slot, for instance,
yes.
Do you have any questions for Brussels?
For Brussels, I think the big question for Brussels is how can Brussels really help us accelerating this whole movement, as I would call it. It's very important for all of us. I think we're going to need the support of Brussels from regulation perspective, but not only regulation. It's how is Brussels going to make it a smooth transition? I think that would be the main question.
Mark?
Yeah, and I'm not sure if I can answer that in, let's say, 1 minute, but I think that we know that this is very high on the priority of the Commission, of our Executive Vice President Frans Timmermans. We expect a lot from the synergies between digital and energy. We are working hard with the regulators, both at national level in terms of energy, but also in telecoms, to make sure that this data sharing happens. And this is not just an energy issue. This is data that has also to do with privacy rules, with personal data, for example, to be able to identify yourself easily, so that electronic payments for these type of energy businesses are easy to happen. So there are a lot of different things that need to happen, but all of them are very high on our priority list, because the digital transition and the energy transition are the big priorities of this Commission, and also of the Recovery Fund. So we think that we're pushing this both by providing the funding, as well as by making sure that the rules are in place to actually make this happen. But it's not going to change overnight. It's going to take some time. That's clear.
There's 150 billion available for the digital transition. It's a lot of money, but we can print money as much as we want in Frankfurt. Marcia, what would you ask from Brussels? Is there anything you need?
We are. Can you guys hear me? Because I cannot see anybody, but I'm hoping you can hear me.
We can hear you. No problem.
What I would ask for Brussels is that Kaluza, our technology, we're right now talking to Spain, we're talking to Portugal, companies in Spain, Portugal, Italy, and all of them are looking to take advantage of flexibility, especially domestic flexibility. But the rules are not yet in place to allow these companies to create the right propositions and give the customers the right incentives. So to the extent that these rules can be fixed by 2024, it would be great, because we feel that based on the forecast, scale in the market is going to happen in the next 2 to 3 years.
Okay, so 2024, next 3-4 years. When will this whole smart energy system be implemented? When it's just working all over the world, and especially in Europe? Prediction?
I would say it's definitely, I know this is a cliche, it's definitely a journey. I think it's just different steps of it. So I would say by 2030, we should have, hopefully have many of the rules, a level playing field, and have scale in the market for at least heat pumps and electric vehicles to be able to contribute to the net zero economy.
Yeah, okay. And the net zero economy, Paul Slot, when will that be here? All the politicians promise about 2050 or 2060. Well, they can do that easily, because that's many, many years ago from here.
Yeah, that's actually, if you dream about it, then you would want to have it as soon as possible. And as a company, we are committed to the Sustainable Development Goals from the United Nations, where consumption, production in a responsible manner is very important. So we're doing everything we can there. We committed ourselves to reduce our carbon footprint significantly. We're moving all over to electric cars.
How much is that?
Actually, we're stopping all electric, actually all fossil cars.
Okay.
We had an ambition to stop with fossil cars in 2025. We actually speeded that up and decided to already in 23. So that's 2 years from now to stop with fossil cars. But if you think about the broader footprint, I think over the next 20 years, we want to cut it by half.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much, panel. Marcia Zavar, Mark van Stiphout, and Paul Slot. Thanks a lot. Back to work. Okay, back in the studio at the table. I'm going to talk to you, Ike. What's to be done now? You're going to mail this paper to everybody, to the audience?
Yes, we will.
Can you give me a summary in 10 seconds? What's in there now?
Yeah, now, not... I will have just a small dream.
Yeah.
Hopefully in 2050 we live in a fossil-free world, and all the energy we consume will be renewable. The sun will shine, the wind is blowing, And even on grey or rainy days, there will be plenty of energy. We use batteries and other solutions. But most important, we use energy when there is plenty, and we be responsible when there is less. And the only thing, like everybody else said this hour, to realize this is to align demand and supply of energy. So the most important thing is that everything is connected and will communicate. And just one more time, we think there's a big role to play for companies like KPN to make this happen.
You know, and people, for the first time in ages, we do realize how important it is when we have clean air. The reason we have been skating in this country, one of the reasons is there was no aeroplanes in the air. So it was a little bit colder. It's proven. Not really proven, okay, whatever. Ladies, thank you very much. This was the system, what is it? The Smart Energy Systems webinar of KPN, and together with GMSA. Thanks a lot, Sylvana and Ike. Back to, I don't know where, to cyber. Bye-bye.